The rain drummed against the tall windows of Moonlight Cafe, creating rivers of light that slid down the glass like tears. Sophia Rivers sat alone at a corner table, her fingers wrapped around a lukewarm cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. The engagement ring that had once felt like a promise now lay silent in a small velvet box beside her phone. 3 years of planning, 3 years of believing in forever. It ended with 8 words from Thomas Mitchell earlier that evening. "I think we want different things, Sophia, I'm sorry." The cafe buzzed with the quiet chatter of couples sharing, dessert and friends catching up over wine. Every laugh felt too loud, every smile too bright. Sophia had come here to think, to process what had just happened, but instead found herself drowning in the happiness of strangers. She was a nurse, someone who spent her days caring for others, healing their pain. Tonight, she had no idea how to heal her own. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Sophia looked up to see a man in his early 30s standing beside the empty chair across from her. He wore a simple gray sweater and dark jeans, nothing fancy, but something about the way he carried himself suggested quiet confidence. His dark hair was slightly damp from the rain, and his brown eyes held a kindness that made her pause. "Oh no, it's free," she replied, gesturing to the chair. "But I'm not exactly good company tonight." He smiled gently as he sat down. "Sometimes, the best company is someone who doesn't feel the need to fill every silence with words." He signaled the waitress and ordered a black coffee, then turned back to Sophia. "I'm Daniel, by the way, Sophia." Notice she managed a small smile. "And thank you for not asking if I'm okay. I've heard that question enough tonight." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "People always want to fix things, don't they? Sometimes we just need someone to sit with us while we figure it out ourselves." There was something refreshing about his approach. No prying questions, no false cheerfulness, just a quiet presence that somehow made the weight in her chest feel a little lighter. Sophia found herself really looking at him for the first time. He had strong hands wrapped around his coffee cup, and there was a small scar near his left temple that spoke of some untold story. His eyes crinkled slightly at the corners when he smiled, suggesting he laughed often. "What brings you out on a night like this?" Sophia asked, surprised by her own curiosity. "Couldn't sleep," Daniel replied honestly. "Sometimes my apartment feels too quiet, too empty. The rain was calling, so I thought I'd find somewhere to watch it fall." He gestured toward the window. "What about you? Besides the obvious fact that you're working through something difficult." Sophia hesitated. Something about Daniel's presence invited honesty. "My fiancé called off our engagement tonight. 3 years together, and apparently he's decided he wants someone who dreams smaller." She laughed bitterly. "I told him I wanted to open a community clinic someday, help people who can't afford proper health care. He said it wasn't realistic." Daniel's expression shifted, becoming more serious. "Dreams aren't supposed to be realistic. They're supposed to be worth fighting for." "Easy to say," Sophia replied, though without malice. "Harder to do when everyone around you thinks you're being foolish. Or maybe you just haven't found the right people yet," Daniel suggested. "The ones who see your dreams as proof of who you are, not evidence of who you're not." Something in his tone made Sophia study his face more carefully. There was a depth there, a weariness that spoke of his own battles with being understood. "You sound like you speak from experience." Daniel was quiet for a moment, watching the rain streak down the windows. "I've learned that the people who truly matter will never ask you to shrink your dreams to fit their comfort zone." They sat in comfortable silence, both lost in their own thoughts. The cafe had begun to empty, the late-night crowd dwindling to just a few scattered tables. Sophia realized she felt more at peace than she had in months. Not happy, exactly, but settled in a way that surprised her. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel said eventually. "Sure. What does your dream clinic look like, if you could build it? Exactly as you imagine." Sophia's eyes brightened for the first time that evening. It would be in one of the neighborhoods where people work 2 jobs just to make rent. Bright and welcoming, not sterile like most medical facilities. There would be a children's area with books and toys because kids shouldn't have to be scared of going to the doctor. We'd have extended hours for people who can't take time off work. and payment plans that actually make sense for real people's budgets. As she spoke, her hands moved expressively, painting pictures in the air. Daniel watched intently, as if memorizing every detail. We'd have a small pharmacy on site, and maybe even a community garden where people could learn about nutrition and growing their own food. It would be about more than just treating illness. It would be about helping people build healthier lives. Sophia paused, suddenly self-conscious. Sorry, I get carried away talking about it. Don't apologize, Daniel said firmly. That vision, that passion, that's exactly what the world needs more of. Thomas was wrong to ask you to dream smaller. The use of her ex-fiancé's name surprised her. She didn't remember mentioning it. I think I did mention his name earlier, she said, more to herself than to Daniel. You did, he confirmed. And I think he made the biggest mistake of his life tonight. Sophia felt heat rise to her cheeks. You don't even know me. I know that you chose to become a nurse, which means you spend your days caring for strangers. I know that instead of dreaming about fancy cars or big houses, you dream about serving people who need help most. I know that you've been sitting here for hours processing one of the most painful nights of your life, but when I asked about your dream, your whole face lit up. Daniel leaned forward slightly. I know enough. The sincerity in his voice made Sophia's heart skip. She hadn't expected this, hadn't expected to meet someone who could see past her pain to the person she was trying to become. What about you? She asked. What are your dreams? Daniel hesitated, and for a moment, something guarded flickered across his features. I dream about building things that matter, creating something that makes people's lives genuinely better, not just easier or more convenient. What kind of things? Technology that serves humanity instead of replacing it. Solutions to problems that actually need solving. He paused. And maybe someday, finding someone who sees past the surface to who I really am underneath. There was a vulnerability in those words that resonated with Sophia deeply. Everyone wanted to be known, truly known, for who they were, rather than who they appeared to be. The waitress approached their table. I'm sorry, folks, but we're closing in. 15 minutes. Sophia glanced at her phone in surprise. It was nearly midnight. She had been talking with Daniel for almost 3 hours, and it felt like 30 minutes. Should probably head home, she said reluctantly. Can I walk you to your car? Daniel offered. It's pretty late, Sophia nodded, gathering her purse and the small velvet box that contained her former future. As they stepped outside, the rain had softened to a gentle mist that caught the streetlights like scattered diamonds. Thank you, Sophia said as they reached her car. For tonight, for listening, for reminding me that my dreams matter. Thank you for sharing them with me, Daniel replied. And Sophia, don't let anyone convince you to settle for less than everything you want. You deserve someone who celebrates your ambitions, not someone who fears them. As Sophia drove home through the quiet streets, she found herself thinking not about Thomas or their broken engagement, but about the stranger who had somehow made her feel more understood in 3 hours than she had felt in 3 years. She didn't even have his last name or phone number, but something told her that this wasn't the end of their story. Back at the cafe, Daniel stood in the rain for a long time, watching her taillights disappear into the night. For the first time in years, he had talked to someone who saw him as simply Daniel, not as Daniel Sterling. The billionaire tech entrepreneur whose face graced magazine covers and whose every move was scrutinized by the media. Tomorrow, he would have to return to board meetings and investment calls, the world where his worth was measured in stock prices and quarterly reports. But tonight, he had been reminded of something he had almost forgotten, the possibility of being loved for who he was, not what he had built. As he walked to his own car, Daniel made a mental note to find Moonlight Cafe's customer feedback system. If Sophia ever mentioned her dream clinic again, he wanted to make sure he could find her. Some dreams, he thought, were too important to leave to chance. 2 weeks had passed since that rainy night at Moonlight Cafe, and Sophia found herself thinking about Daniel more often than she cared to admit. She had returned to the cafe 3 times, hoping to see him again, but each visit left her sitting, alone with her coffee and her thoughts. Rebecca Hayes, her roommate and best friend, had grown tired of hearing about the mysterious stranger who had somehow managed to shift Sophia's entire perspective on her future. "You're being ridiculous," Rebecca said one Thursday morning as they prepared for their shifts at Metropolitan General Hospital. "You talked to a guy for 3 hours, and now you're acting like he's the love of your life. You don't even know his last name." Sophia adjusted her scrubs and grabbed her coffee mug. "It's not about romance, Becca. It's about how he made me feel. Like my dreams actually mattered." "When was the last time Thomas made me feel that way?" "Thomas is an idiot," Rebecca replied, softening her tone. "But that doesn't mean you should pin all your hopes on a stranger. What if you never see him again?" The question haunted Sophia throughout her shift. As she moved from room to room, checking on patients and administering medications, she found herself wondering what Daniel did for work, where he lived, whether he ever thought about their conversation. The not knowing felt like an itch she couldn't scratch. During her lunch break, Sophia sat in the hospital cafeteria scrolling through her phone when a news alert caught her attention. The headline read, "Sterling Technologies announces major healthcare initiative." She clicked on the article more out of professional interest than anything else. The healthcare industry was always evolving, and as a nurse, she tried to stay informed about developments that might affect patient care. The article detailed how Sterling Technologies, a major tech company, was launching a program to improve healthcare access in underserved communities. The CEO, a young billionaire named Daniel Sterling, was quoted extensively about his vision for technology-driven solutions to healthcare inequality. Sophia found herself impressed by his articulate discussion of the very issues she had witnessed, firsthand in her work. Then she saw his photo. Her coffee mug slipped from her hands, clattering against the table and splashing lukewarm coffee across the newspaper someone had left behind. The face staring back at her from her phone screen was unmistakable. The same kind brown eyes, the same gentle smile, the same scar near his left temple. Daniel from the café was Daniel Sterling, one of the wealthiest men in the country. Sophia's mind raced as pieces began falling into place. His expensive but understated clothing, his confidence, the way he had seemed genuinely interested in her dreams about helping underserved communities. Had he been studying her? Was their entire conversation some kind of research for his new initiative? The rest of her shift passed in a blur. She mechanically completed her tasks, while her thoughts churned with questions and doubts. By the time she arrived home that evening, she had worked herself into a state of frustrated confusion. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Rebecca observed as Sophia collapsed onto their couch. "Worse, I found out who Daniel really is." Sophia showed Rebecca the article on her phone. Rebecca's eyes widened as she read. "Holy shit, Sophia. You had coffee with Daniel Sterling? Do you have any idea how rich this guy is?" "It's rich enough that I'm wondering if our entire conversation was fake," Sophia replied miserably. "Think about it. What are the odds that I randomly meet a billionaire tech CEO who's launching a healthcare initiative, and I spend 3 hours telling him about my dream to open a community clinic?" "Maybe the odds are better than you think," Rebecca said thoughtfully. "I mean, if he's really passionate about healthcare access, wouldn't it make sense that he'd end up in places where he might meet people who share those interests?" Sophia wanted to believe that, but doubt had taken root in her mind. Maybe I was just free market research. Get the pretty nurse to talk about her dreams and use her ideas for your billion-dollar company. Before Rebecca could respond, Sophia's phone rang. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number, but something made her answer. "Hello, Sophia. It's Daniel, from the café." Her heart stopped. "Where did you get my number?" "Called the hospital and asked to speak with Nurse Sophia Rivers. I told them it was about a patient consultation." "I hope that's okay." Sophia's training kicked in. "Is there a patient who needs help?" Daniel's laugh was nervous. "No, I'm sorry. That was misleading. I wanted to talk to you and I couldn't think of another way to find you. I've been going back to the cafe hoping to see you again." Despite her suspicions, Sophia felt a flutter of hope. "You have every night for 2 weeks? Look, I know this might sound strange, but would you like to have dinner? There are some things I'd like to tell you." Sophia hesitated. Part of her wanted to confront him about his identity over the phone, but a larger part was curious about what he wanted to say. "Where did you have in mind?" There's a small Italian place called Rosario's on 5th Street. Nothing fancy, just good food and quiet conversation. Would tomorrow night work? Okay. Sophia found herself saying, 7 o'clock? Perfect. And Sophia, thank you for giving me a chance. After she hung up, Rebecca stared at her in disbelief. You're actually going to dinner with him? I need to know why he didn't tell me who he really is, Sophia replied. I need to know if any of it was real. The next evening, Sophia stood outside Rosario's for 10 minutes before finally going inside. She had changed clothes 4 times, settling on a simple blue dress that Rebecca insisted brought out her eyes. She spotted Daniel immediately, sitting at a corner table, much like the one they had shared at the café. He stood as she approached, and she noticed he looked nervous. You came, he said, sounding genuinely relieved. I almost didn't, Sophia replied honestly as they sat down. Daniel nodded. I wouldn't have blamed you if you hadn't. I know you must have questions. Just one, really. Sophia met his eyes across the small table. Were you lying to me that night at the café? The question hung between them like a challenge. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. I never lied to you, he said finally. But I didn't tell you the whole truth either. Daniel Sterling, Sophia said his full name for the first time. Billionaire CEO of Sterling Technologies. Currently launching a major healthcare initiative that happens to align perfectly with everything I told you about my dreams. Daniel's face fell. You think I was using you for information, weren't you? No. His answer was immediate and firm. Sophia, I was at that cafe because I couldn't sleep. I've been having trouble sleeping for months, actually. The healthcare initiative wasn't even my idea originally. My sister Grace suggested it after she spent time volunteering at a free clinic. He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. When I saw you sitting there alone, looking like your world had just fallen apart, I didn't see an opportunity for market research. I saw someone who needed what I needed that night, just another human being to sit with. Sophia studied his face, searching for signs of deception. But you must have known that I was a nurse. You asked about my work. I knew you worked in healthcare because you mentioned it when you talked about why your fiancé left. But I didn't know you were a nurse until you told me. And honestly, by then, I was more interested in you as a person than in what you did for work. The waiter approached their table, and they ordered their meals in silence. Sophia felt the weight of Daniel's explanation settling over her. She wanted to believe him, but the coincidence still seemed too convenient. Why didn't you tell me who you were? She asked, once the waiter had left. Daniel's expression grew pained. Because for 3 hours you saw me as just Daniel. Not Daniel Sterling, the billionaire, not the CEO, not the guy whose net worth gets discussed in magazines. Just a man having coffee with a woman who was brave enough to dream about changing the world. He leaned forward. You have any idea how rare that is for someone like me? Someone like you? Someone whose wealth defines them in other people's eyes before they even speak? I can't go anywhere without people either wanting something from me or treating me like I'm not quite human. His voice dropped. That night at the cafe, you talked to me like I was just a regular person. When was the last time someone asked me about my dreams instead of my stock portfolio? Sophia felt her anger beginning to soften, replaced by something that might have been understanding. She had never considered how isolating extreme wealth might be. So when you encouraged me to pursue my clinic dream, that was real? That was the most real conversation I'd had in years, Daniel replied without hesitation. Your passion, your vision for helping people, it reminded me why I got into technology in the first place. Not to get rich, but to solve problems that mattered. There. Meals arrived, and they ate in thoughtful silence. Sophia found herself watching Daniel carefully, noting the way he ate, the way he interacted with their waiter, the way he seemed genuinely uncomfortable with the expensive watch on his wrist. Can I ask you something now? Daniel said eventually. Sophia nodded. Are you disappointed that I'm not just some regular guy you met at a cafe? The question caught her off guard. She had expected him to ask if she was interested in his money, or if she wanted something from him now that she knew his identity. Instead, he seemed genuinely worried that his wealth might change how she saw him as a person. I don't know, Sophia answered honestly. Keep wondering if I would have been brave enough to share my dreams with Daniel Sterling, billionaire CEO. or if I would have been too intimidated to be honest. And now? Sophia considered this carefully. Now I think I'm more interested in getting to know Daniel Sterling, the person. It's the one who sits in cafes when he can't sleep and listens to strangers talk about their dreams. Daniel's smile was the same gentle expression she remembered from that rainy night. He's the same guy, Sophia, just with a more complicated bank account. They talked for 2 more hours, sharing stories about their childhoods, their fears, their hopes for the future. Daniel told her about growing up with wealth, but feeling disconnected from most of his peers. Sophia shared more about her work at the hospital, about the patients who had taught her that healing was about more than just medical treatment. I have a confession, Daniel said as they prepared to leave. The healthcare initiative we're launching? I've been thinking about your community clinic idea, not to steal it, but to help make it happen. Sophia's heart skipped. What do you mean? I mean, what if your dream doesn't have to stay just a dream? What if we could build it together? The offer hung between them, full of possibility and complications. Sophia realized that her feelings for Daniel had nothing to do with his money, and everything to do with the way he made her believe. That her dreams were not only valid, but achievable. I'd like that, she said softly. But I have one condition. Anything. When we're together, you're just Daniel. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, just the man who believes in dreams big enough to change the world. Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. Deal? As long as when we're together, you're just Sophia. Not the nurse who thinks she doesn't deserve everything she's dreaming of, just the woman brave enough to imagine a better world. As they walked to their cars, Sophia felt something shift inside her chest. The trust that had been shattered 2 weeks ago was slowly rebuilding itself, not around the illusion of safety, but around the possibility of partnership. Daniel wasn't offering her security like Thomas had. He was offering her something far more valuable, the chance to build something meaningful together. Sophia, Daniel called as she reached her car. Yes, that night at the cafe, when you were talking about your clinic, you said it would be about more than treating illness. You said it would be about helping people build healthier lives. Yes. Remember, I think you've already started doing that. You certainly helped me build a healthier life. As Sophia drove home, she found herself smiling for the first time since her engagement had ended. Tomorrow would bring new questions and challenges. But tonight she felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the excitement of not knowing what came next, and the trust that whatever it was, she wouldn't be facing it alone. 3 months had passed since that dinner at Rosario's. Sophia's life had transformed in ways she never could have imagined. What had begun as evening conversations over coffee had evolved into weekend trips to visit potential sites for her community clinic, late-night planning sessions spread across Daniel's dining room table, and quiet moments that felt more intimate than any grand romantic gesture. Daniel had kept his promise. When they were together, he was simply the man who remembered how she liked her coffee and listened intently when she described her patient's stories. But the outside world had begun to take notice of their relationship, and with that attention came complications neither of them had anticipated. Sophia first became aware of the scrutiny when Rebecca showed her a gossip blog article titled, "Mystery Woman Captures Sterling's Heart." The photo had been taken outside a small cafe where she and Daniel had been discussing architectural plans for the clinic. In the image, she was laughing at something he had said, her hand resting on his arm in an unconsciously intimate gesture. At least they got your good side, Rebecca said, trying to lighten the mood as Sophia stared at the screen in horror. This is exactly what I was afraid of, Sophia replied, sinking into their couch. I didn't sign up to have my life examined under a microscope. The article speculated about her background, her job, even her relationship with Thomas. Someone had dug up her engagement announcement from the local newspaper and contrasted it with her current situation. The comments section was a mix of curiosity and cruelty that made Sophia's stomach churn. When Daniel arrived that evening for their dinner plans, he found Sophia sitting in her kitchen still wearing her scrubs from work, the gossip article open on her laptop. I saw it, he said without preamble, his face grim. I'm sorry, Sophia, I should have warned you this might happen. How do you stand it? She asked. Having strangers dissect your personal life like it's entertainment? Daniel sat beside her. At the small kitchen table, honestly, I usually don't care because there isn't much personal life for them to dissect. Work, charity events, the occasional business dinner. You're the first person who's mattered enough to make their attention. Feel invasive? Sophia closed the laptop, suddenly exhausted. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this, Daniel. I became a nurse because I wanted to help people quietly, behind the scenes. This feels like the opposite of everything I value. It could be more. Careful, Daniel offered. Private restaurants? My apartment? Instead of public places? You mean we could hide? Sophia said flatly. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Yes, I suppose that's what I mean. The honesty in his admission hit Sophia harder than any reassurance would have. This was the reality of loving someone whose life played out in public view. The question was whether what they had together was worth the price of that visibility. Before she could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID showed Thomas Mitchell's name, and Sophia felt her heart sink. She hadn't spoken to her ex-fiancé since the night he had ended their engagement. I should take this, she told Daniel, stepping into the living room. Hello, Thomas. Sophia, thank God, I've been trying to reach you for days. Thomas's voice carried an urgency she had never heard before. We need to talk. I think we said everything we needed to say 3 months ago. That was before I saw the news about you and Daniel Sterling. Thomas's tone shifted, becoming the confident, slightly condescending voice she remembered from their relationship. Sophia, you're in over your head. Do you have any idea what you're dealing with? I'm dealing with a man who respects my dreams and supports my goals, Sophia replied, her voice sharper than she intended. You're dealing with a billionaire who could destroy you with a phone call if things go wrong, Thomas shot back. These people aren't like us, Sophia. They don't form attachments the way normal people do. When he gets bored, you'll be discarded like yesterday's news. Is there a point to this call, Thomas? The point is that I made a mistake. I was scared of your ambitions because I thought they would take you away from me, but I was wrong. Your dreams are part of what makes you extraordinary. His voice softened. Come back to me, Sophia. We can build the life we planned, and you can still have your clinic. I've been thinking about it, and I know people who could help with funding. Sophia felt a familiar tug in her chest. Thomas was offering her everything she had once wanted: security, predictability, a future mapped out in safe, achievable steps. It would be so much easier than navigating the complexities of loving someone whose world operated by entirely different rules. I need to think about this, she said finally. Of course, but don't wait too long, Sophia. Men like Sterling don't stay interested in women like us for very long. After she hung up, Sophia stood in her living room for a long time, staring at nothing. Daniel appeared in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. Everything okay? Thomas wants to get back together, Sophia said without looking at him. She felt rather than saw Daniel's reaction, a subtle shift in the air between them. What did you tell him? That I needed to think about it. Daniel nodded slowly. And you? Need to think about it? Sophia finally turned to face him. I don't know. 3 months ago, my biggest worry was whether I could afford to take a weekend off work. Now I'm having my entire life analyzed by strangers on the internet. Thomas is offering me a return to simplicity. And what am I offering you? Daniel asked quietly. The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Sophia realized that for all their planning sessions and intimate conversations, they had never directly addressed what their relationship was becoming or where it might lead. I don't know, she admitted. We spend time together. We're building something meaningful with the clinic project, but we've never talked about us, what we are, what we want from each other. Daniel was quiet for so long that Sophia began to worry she had pushed too hard. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw with vulnerability. I'm afraid to want too much from you, he said. Every relationship I've ever had has been complicated by my money. Women who claimed to love me, but really loved the lifestyle I could provide. Others who were so intimidated by my wealth that they never let me close enough to matter. He met her eyes. You're the first person who's ever made me hope that someone could love me for who I am underneath all of it. And I'm the first person who's ever made me believe my dreams were worth pursuing, Sophia replied. But Daniel, love isn't just about how we make each other feel. It's about whether we can build a real life together, with all the complications that brings. What kind? of life do you want?" he asked. Sophia had been asking herself the same question for weeks. "I want to wake up next to someone who sees me as an equal partner, not as someone to be protected or provided for. I want to build something meaningful that helps people. I want quiet Sunday mornings and loud Friday nights and the security of knowing that we choose each other every day, not because it's easy, but because it's right." "I want all of that too," Daniel said immediately. "But I come with complications, Sophia. Media attention, security concerns, people who will always wonder if you're with me for my money. I can't make those things disappear. I come with complications too," Sophia replied. "I work long hours taking care of people who can't always pay their bills. I dream about opening a clinic in a neighborhood where the average patient will never be able to afford expensive treatments. I'm not interested in charity galas or society events. I don't want to be anyone's trophy girlfriend." Daniel smiled for the first time since the conversation began. "I've never wanted a trophy girlfriend. I want a partner who challenges me to be better than I am, even if that partner doesn't fit into your world." "Especially then," Daniel said, without hesitation. "Sophia, I don't want you to fit into my world. I want us to build our own world, one that makes sense for both of us." Sophia felt something settle in her chest, a sense of rightness that had nothing to do with security and everything to do with recognition. This was what love looked like when it was built on equal ground, not the promise of safety, but the commitment to face uncertainty together. "There's something I need to tell you," she said. "I've been offered a position as head nurse at a private clinic in Thomas's neighborhood. Great pay, regular hours, the kind of respectable job that would make my parents proud." Daniel's face went carefully blank. "Are you going to take it?" "I was considering it," Sophia admitted, "until I realized that taking that job would mean giving up on the community clinic dream. It would mean choosing security over impact, comfort over purpose. And now I think I'd rather take the risk of building something meaningful with someone who believes in it as much as I do." She stepped closer to him, as if you're willing to risk building it with someone who comes with her own complications. Daniel reached for her hands. "What kind of complications?" "I'll never be comfortable with media attention. I'll probably always worry that people think I'm with you for your money. I work with people who are dying, and some days that's going to make me sad or angry or distant. I have student loans, and I drive a 10-year-old car, and I buy my clothes at discount stores." "Those aren't complications," Daniel said, pulling her closer. "Those are just details of who you are. And I love who you are." The words hung in the air between them, the first time either had used the word love directly. Sophia felt her heart skip, not with the nervous flutter of new attraction, but with the deep recognition of coming home. "I love you too," she said, softly, not despite your wealth or because of it, but for the person you choose to be with it. Daniel's kiss was gentle and certain, carrying the weight of a promise rather than the desperate need of new passion. When they broke apart, Sophia felt something she had never experienced before, the absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we build our clinic," Daniel replied. "We deal with gossip blogs and nosy reporters and people who don't understand what we see in each other. We figure out how to merge your world and mine into something that works for both of us." "That sounds complicated." "The best things usually are," Daniel said, smiling. "But I'd rather have a complicated life with you than a simple one without you." 6 months later, Sophia stood in the main examination room of Rivers Community Clinic, watching as Daniel helped install the last of the energy-efficient lighting fixtures. The space was everything she had dreamed of, bright and welcoming, equipped with modern medical technology, but designed to feel more like a family practice than a sterile hospital. The media attention had never completely disappeared. Sophia had learned to navigate it with the same steady competence she brought to her medical work. She and Daniel had found their rhythm, balancing public appearances with private moments, building a relationship that belonged to them rather than to the expectations of others. "What do you think?" Daniel asked, stepping back to admire the completed room. Sophia looked around at the realization of her impossible dream. examination rooms designed with children in mind, a pharmacy stocked with affordable medications, a community education space where they would offer classes on nutrition and preventive care. In 2 weeks, they would open their doors to their first patients. And that sometimes the best things happen when you're brave enough to want something bigger than what feels safe. Daniel squeezed her hand. Even when it comes with complications. Especially then, Sophia replied, echoing his words from months earlier. After all, the most important things are worth a little risk. As they locked up the clinic that evening, Sophia realized that her lonely night at Moonlight Café had led her to something she had never known she was looking for. Not just love, but partnership. Not just security, but purpose. Not just a relationship, but a shared mission to make the world a little bit better. Thomas had been wrong about one thing. Daniel hadn't grown bored with her because she wasn't like the women in his usual circle. Instead, he had fallen deeper in love with her precisely because she remained authentically herself, bringing her own dreams and values into their relationship rather than simply adopting his. And Sophia had discovered that real love wasn't about finding someone who offered her a perfect life, but about finding someone willing to build an imperfect, complicated, meaningful life together. As they drove home through the city's streets, her engagement ring from Thomas long since returned. Sophia wore a simple silver band that Daniel had given her the day they signed the lease for the clinic. It wasn't an engagement ring, but a promise ring, representing their commitment to building something lasting together. One careful decision at a time, the future stretched ahead of them, full of uncertainty and possibility in equal measure. But for the first time in her life, Sophia wasn't afraid of not knowing what came next. She had learned that the most beautiful stories weren't the ones with guaranteed happy endings, but the ones where two people chose to write the next chapter, together, trusting that love and shared purpose were strong enough foundations for whatever came next. The end.